Lily Harper, a 19-year-old rising model with dreams bigger than her small town, vanished without a trace on a sunny Friday afternoon, and Detective Marcus Reed knew from the moment the call came in that this case would be anything but ordinary. It was an ordinary Friday afternoon when Lily Harper, a 19-year-old aspiring model, left her apartment to attend a photo shoot downtown. The sun shone brightly over the quiet streets of her suburban neighborhood, and the world seemed to hum along as if nothing unusual was about to happen. Lily, with her signature charm and energy, had been on the rise in the modeling world, landing her first major campaign just weeks earlier. Her parents expected her home by early evening, as she usually returned from her shoots promptly, but hours passed with no sign of her. The first hints that something was wrong came from her friends, who tried calling her repeatedly, only to be met with voicemail. By nightfall, panic began to settle in. Her parents called the local police, who immediately began taking her disappearance seriously. Investigators arrived at her apartment, searching for clues that might explain why a bright, ambitious young woman had vanished so suddenly. There were no signs of a struggle inside her home. Her belongings were untouched, and nothing seemed out of place. It was as if she had stepped out for a brief errand and simply never returned. Police quickly turned their attention to the area surrounding the photo shoot. Witnesses were interviewed, including photographers, assistants, and nearby shopkeepers. Several people reported seeing a black van parked near an alley close to the studio, lingering long enough to draw suspicion. Some even remembered a man leaning against the vehicle, watching the street with an intensity that unsettled them. The officers noted these accounts carefully, though at first nothing concrete linked the van to Lily's disappearance. CCTV footage from nearby streets began to provide pieces of the puzzle. Grainy images showed Lily walking toward the shoot, smiling and confident, carrying her portfolio and camera equipment. Moments later, a figure appeared behind her, shadowy and indistinct in the footage, following at a careful distance. The man's features were impossible to make out, but his presence raised immediate concerns. Police began to reconstruct Lily's movements, hoping to pinpoint exactly when and where she might have been taken. As the hours turned into a night and the night into the early morning, the tension in the neighborhood grew. News crews arrived, and social media buzzed with speculation about her sudden disappearance. Friends and family launched online appeals, sharing photos and descriptions of Lily in the hope someone would come forward with information. The atmosphere was a mix of fear, confusion, and hope, each emotion intertwining as the investigation intensified. Detectives faced the grim reality that time was critical. The initial hours after a disappearance are often the most important, and every lead, no matter how small, could be the key to finding her. As they pieced together witness statements and video evidence, a chilling picture began to emerge. Someone had been watching Lily, planning to intervene at the perfect moment. It was no longer a simple case of a young woman missing. It was quickly shaping into a deliberate and potentially dangerous crime. The community, once calm and ordinary, now buzzed with unease, all waiting for answers that seemed to hang just out of reach. Detectives knew that finding Lily Harper required careful attention to every detail. The investigation quickly moved beyond her apartment and the photo studio. Officers canvassed the surrounding streets, talking to anyone who might have seen something unusual. Business owners recalled a black van parked near the alley for several hours, and a few witnesses described a man with a cold, distant expression lingering near the entrance. Every memory was documented, and patterns began to emerge, though nothing immediately pointed to the person responsible. Phone records were among the first pieces of evidence investigators examined. Lily's calls and messages over the past week revealed nothing alarming at first glance, but a closer look suggested she had received an unfamiliar number multiple times, a number that had called and hung up without leaving a message. Digital forensics teams worked around the clock to trace the origin, searching for connections that might lead to her. The possibility that someone had been tracking her movements grew stronger with each new discovery. As days passed, detectives turned their attention to Lily's social circle. Friends and colleagues described her as careful, cautious, and generally aware of her surroundings. She had never mentioned feeling threatened or uncomfortable, making the sudden disappearance even more perplexing. Yet investigators noticed subtle details. A friend remembered a man lingering unusually long near the studio while waiting for Lily to arrive, and another recalled seeing her glance nervously over her shoulder. These small recollections, once overlooked, now took on new significance in the context of her vanishing. Forensic specialists scoured the last known locations for tangible clues. At the alley behind the photo studio, they found a small footprint in the dirt and a torn piece of fabric caught on a low fence. Though minor, these details hinted at a struggle or forced movement, suggesting that Lily had been taken against her will. Soil samples were collected for analysis, hoping to match them with other locations later. Investigators also checked nearby homes and vehicles for any traces of her, moving quickly to follow every lead before it went cold. The pressure of the case weighed heavily on the detectives. Each hour that passed without a breakthrough made the situation more urgent. They coordinated with neighboring jurisdictions, sharing information and coordinating searches. Drone teams and K-9 units scoured wooded areas and empty lots in the vicinity, looking for any sign of Lily or evidence that could point to her abductor. Every unconfirmed sighting was investigated, every rumor treated as a potential lead. While the investigation intensified, the community remained on edge. Social media posts speculated about suspects, and local news broadcasts provided constant updates, sometimes complicating the work of law enforcement by spreading unverified claims. Amid the uncertainty, detectives relied on methodical evidence gathering, piecing together a timeline and narrowing down potential suspects. It became clear that someone had been watching Lily, studying her routine, and carefully planning her disappearance. The painstaking work of connecting these fragments would soon uncover a chilling reality, one that would shake the town to its core. A week after Lily Harper disappeared, hope began to fade as search efforts yielded little. The police had followed countless leads, interviewed dozens of witnesses, and combed through digital evidence, yet the young model remained missing. Then, a hiker exploring a secluded stretch of woods on the outskirts of town stumbled upon something that would change the course of the investigation. Hidden beneath a thick layer of fallen leaves and underbrush was a shallow grave, partially concealed and deliberately placed in a remote area. The sight sent a chill through the hiker, who immediately contacted authorities. Police arrived swiftly, cordoning off the area and beginning a careful examination. What they found was horrifying. Lily Harper had been buried alive. She had been placed in the grave while still conscious, a detail that investigators would later confirm through forensic analysis. The methodical nature of the burial and the effort taken to hide it pointed to premeditation. This was not a crime of passion or an impulsive act. It was calculated, cruel, and terrifying. Detectives combed the surrounding area for any other traces, collecting soil samples, footprints, and pieces of debris that might lead them to the perpetrator. The discovery shocked the community. News of the grave spread quickly, leaving neighbors and friends in disbelief. How could someone commit such a heinous act so close to town, in a place that seemed ordinary and safe? The media descended on the area, broadcasting the grim news, while social media erupted with speculation and condolences. For Lily's family, the revelation was devastating. The relief of knowing she was found alive had been replaced with unimaginable grief and horror. Every detail of the scene suggested that the killer had planned carefully, selecting a location that offered both concealment and control, and ensuring that the crime could be carried out without interruption. Forensics teams worked tirelessly to analyze the grave and its surroundings. Soil composition, the depth of the burial, and the angle of the earthhole indicated deliberate preparation. Small clues, such as a crushed branch and tire tracks nearby, hinted at the movement of a vehicle used to transport Lily. The investigators realized that the killer had not acted impulsively. He had watched, waited, and chosen the exact moment and place to commit the crime. These details, while chilling, provided the police with crucial leads that would later help identify the perpetrator. Detectives also began to reconstruct Lily's final movements in precise detail. By cross-referencing witness accounts, CCTV footage, and physical evidence, they mapped a timeline that narrowed the window in which she was taken. Every minor inconsistency in previous witness statements gained new significance. The combination of forensic evidence and meticulous investigative work began to reveal a disturbing portrait of someone who had studied Lily's habits and routines, waiting for the perfect opportunity to carry out a dark plan. The shocking discovery of the grave marked a turning point in the case. From that moment, it was no longer just a disappearance investigation, it was a murder investigation with the added horror of premeditation and cruelty. The sense of urgency intensified, and the pressure on the detectives grew. Every clue, no matter how small, was now a potential breakthrough. The quiet woods where Lily had been hidden would soon become the key to unraveling the terrifying story behind her disappearance, revealing the mind of someone capable of unimaginable evil. The breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected angle. After the discovery of Lily Harper's grave, police intensified their search for any connections that might lead to the perpetrator. One morning, a neighbor called in a tip about a black van frequently parked near the woods where Lily had been found. The neighbor described seeing a man who often lingered around the area, appearing watchful and tense, as if guarding something hidden. Investigators immediately began tracing the vehicle, pulling registration records and cross-referencing them with local criminal databases. The van was eventually linked to a man with a history of minor assaults and unsettling behavior, though nothing in his record suggested he was capable of such a violent crime. Officers reviewed his past thoroughly, looking for any patterns that could explain his interest in young women or a possible motive for targeting Lily specifically. His digital activity became a key focus. Investigators discovered that he had been searching for information about modeling schedules and local studios, which suggested he had been planning the crime well in advance. Evidence gathered from the suspect's home added weight to the case. Investigators found clothing and items that matched fibers and traces discovered at the crime scene. More troubling was a notebook containing detailed observations of daily routines in the area around Lily's apartment and the photo studio. These notes indicated a level of premeditation that was deeply unsettling. He had studied her movements, identified times when she would be alone, and prepared the remote location in advance. Forensic teams also matched soil from his property to samples taken from the grave, establishing a clear connection. Police began to reconstruct the crime, piecing together the chilling sequence of events. It appeared that the man had followed Lily from the photoshoot, waiting for the moment she was isolated. Using his van to abduct her, he transported her to the woods, where he had already prepared the shallow grave. Every step was calculated, minimizing the risk of detection while maximizing control over the victim. The meticulous planning was disturbing not only for investigators, but also for the community, which had begun to realize the calculated nature of the crime. As the investigation progressed, detectives uncovered more evidence that painted a complete picture of the suspect's mindset. Surveillance footage from nearby streets showed him repeatedly driving near Lily's apartment in the weeks before her disappearance. Phone records confirmed that he had been monitoring local communications and possibly tracking her interactions with friends and colleagues. The depth of his preparation revealed a disturbing obsession, a fixation that had escalated into a deadly act. With mounting evidence, authorities felt confident in making an arrest. The man was taken into custody quietly, without incident, and transported to the police station for questioning. Once confronted with the evidence, he remained silent for several hours before eventually acknowledging his involvement. Investigators knew they had uncovered a carefully orchestrated crime, but the extent of his planning and the cold efficiency with which he executed it sent shockwaves through the town. Every detail confirmed that this was not an impulsive act of violence, but the calculated result of weeks of observation, preparation, and intent. The arrest of the man brought both relief and a renewed wave of shock to the community. Police had gathered overwhelming evidence linking him to the abduction and burial of Lily Harper, and forensic teams continued to uncover details that revealed the full scope of his planning. Investigators found additional items in his home: maps, notes, and photographs of areas he had scouted that confirmed the meticulous nature of his crime. Each discovery deepened the understanding of how carefully he had orchestrated every step, from monitoring Lily's schedule to choosing a secluded location for the grave. The legal process moved forward quickly, given the strength of the evidence. During pretrial proceedings, prosecutors presented a detailed account of the man's actions, highlighting the premeditation, manipulation, and cruelty involved. While the suspect initially resisted cooperating, the evidence was undeniable. Every fiber, soil sample, digital record, and eyewitness account formed an unbroken chain connecting him to Lily's disappearance and death. The case shocked the public not only because of the brutality of the act, but also because of the careful, calculated nature of the crime, demonstrating how someone could plan so deliberately without arousing suspicion until it was too late. Lily's family faced unimaginable grief, yet they attended court proceedings determined to see justice served. Friends and community members filled the courtroom, bearing witness to the trial that had captured national attention. Prosecutors emphasized the deliberate cruelty of the crime, the psychological trauma inflicted on Lily, and the threat posed by someone capable of such premeditated violence. Defense efforts attempted to downplay his intent, but the evidence so meticulously collected and documented by investigators left little room for doubt. Throughout the trial, details emerged that revealed the suspect's obsession and planning. Experts explained the behavioral patterns often associated with calculated violent acts, describing how he had studied his victim, timed her movements, and chosen a location that minimized the risk of discovery. These explanations, while chilling, helped the public understand the methods behind a crime that had seemed incomprehensible. Each revelation underscored the dedication and expertise of law enforcement, whose careful attention to detail had prevented the case from going unsolved. The verdict was ultimately decisive. The man was found guilty of multiple charges, including kidnapping, premeditated murder, and abuse. Sentencing reflected the severity of his actions, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. For Lily's family, the conviction brought a measure of closure, though the pain of losing her remained profound. The community, shaken by the events, reflected on the vulnerability of ordinary life and the importance of vigilance, awareness, and the tireless work of law enforcement professionals. In the aftermath, the story of Lily Harper became a symbol of both tragedy and resilience. Her life, though cut short, inspired conversations about safety, the warning signs of predatory behavior, and the importance of community involvement in preventing crimes. Law enforcement agencies highlighted the case as an example of meticulous investigation, careful evidence collection, and the persistence required to bring even the most calculated criminals to justice. The town slowly began to heal, carrying forward the memory of Lily as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the determination of those who refused to let her disappearance remain unsolved.